Your nervous system is not interested in truth, it is interested in survival and continuity. It takes raw sensations, a tightening in the chest, a quickening of breath, a shift in chemistry, and it asks, what does this mean? This statement is pointing to a very specific split between raw experience and interpretation. Your nervous system, at its most basic biological level, does not seek truth in the philosophical sense. It is not trying to understand reality objectively. It is trying to keep the organism alive and stable. So, when something happens inside you, say tightening in the chest, faster heartbeat, shallow breathing, heat in the face, those are just signals, pure physiology. But the mind almost instantly does something else. It converts sensation into meaning. It asks, is something wrong? Am I in danger? What does this say about me? What will happen next? That translation is not neutral. It is shaped by memory, fear, conditioning, past experiences, identity, and imagination. So the idea is the nervous system is survival mechanism. It reacts first, automatically, without philosophy. Its job is detect threat, preserve stability, avoid uncertainty, reduce unpredictability. It does not care whether your interpretation is true. It cares whether you survive the next moment. The mind is meaning-making machine. It takes raw signals and builds a story. I'm anxious. Something bad is going to happen. This means I'm not okay. This is a problem I must solve immediately. That story often feels like truth, but it is actually interpretation layered on top of sensation. The confusion humans live in. We rarely experience sensation directly. We experience sensation plus interpretation plus identity reaction. So instead of tight chest, we experience I'm anxious and something's wrong with me. That second version is what creates suffering, panic, and escalation. The deeper point. The suggestion is not to fix the nervous system or to control thoughts. It is to see the nervous system reacts, the mind narrates, you mistake narration for reality. And once that mistake happens, you are no longer in contact with what is actually happening. You are in contact with the story about what is happening. Simple distilled version. Nervous system, something is happening. Mind, this means something is wrong. You believe the mind, not the raw data. And the entire inner chaos is born there. You feel a contraction in the chest. The body says nothing, it just contracts. But the mind rushes in. This is heartbreak. She mattered. I lost something real. Now look carefully. The sensation was simple. The story made it personal, meaningful, and heavy. Here is the mechanism. Sensation arises. Neutral, raw. Memory gets triggered. Past images, fragments. Story forms, narration. This is happening to me. Identity attaches. This is my life, my pain. Now the loop is complete. And once the loop is complete, the illusion feels real. Why? Because your nervous system cannot distinguish between something happening outside and something vividly recreated inside. To it, both are signals. So when you replay a memory, your body reacts as if it is happening now. Heart rate changes, hormones shift, muscles tighten, and then you say, see, it must be real. I can feel it. No, you are feeling the body's response to a thought. Let's expand it in a way that makes the mechanism more visible from the inside. The key misunderstanding, feeling equal to truth. When the body reacts, it feels undeniable. That is the trap. But what's actually happening is the body is responding to signals, not truth. A thought is not just in the mind. It is a neutral event, and the body is wired to treat neural events as if they are perceptions of reality. So when a memory appears, the body doesn't label it as past, imagined, symbolic. It simply registers something is happening. Why the body cannot distinguish real versus imagined? From a survival standpoint, the nervous system evolved under one rule. If it feels real, respond. It was never designed for replaying memories, stimulating relationships, imagining futures in high resolution. So when you vividly recall something, visual imagery activates sensory cortices. Emotional memory centers re engage. Autonomic system response, heart rate, breath, tension. To the body, a memory with enough clarity is an event. This is why a breakup replay can produce almost the same physiology as the breakup itself. The loop expanded slowly. Let's slow down what you wrote. Step 1. Raw sensation appears. A contraction in the chest arises. This is just interoceptive signal, body awareness, no meaning attached yet. At this stage, there is only energy and sensation. Step 2. Memory gets activated. The nervous system searches for context. It pulls her face, conversations, rejection moments, emotional peaks. This is automatic, not chosen. Step 3. Narrative formation. The mind tries to stabilize uncertainty. This is heartbreak. Now something crucial happens. Ambiguity collapses. Meaning is assigned. Chaos becomes story. But the story is not perception, it is interpretation. Step 4. Identity attaches. This is the deep lock in. This is happening to me. Now it is no longer just an event. It becomes my loss, my pain, my life situation, my emotional reality. This is where suffering begins to intensify. Why it feels more real than real? Because two systems are now active at once. Body simulation, heart races, breath changes, tension appears, mental cinema, images, dialogue, emotional replay. They reinforce each other. So the mind concludes, if I feel this strongly, it must be true. But the inversion is, it feels strong because it is being continuously re-triggered by thought. The hidden loop that keeps it alive. The loop is self-feeding. Thought appears, body reacts, reaction is noticed, attention returns to thought, thought becomes stronger, body reacts more. This is why it escalates instead of fading. Not because the situation is still happening, but because attention keeps reanimating it. The core insight. What you are calling pain is often a present moment physiological response to an absent moment narrative. Meaning, the event is gone. The body response is current. The story bridges them and makes it feel continuous. That continuity is the illusion of I am still in it. The most important distinction. There are two completely different experiences. Raw experience, tight chest, heat, breaths change. Interpreted experience, I am heartbroken. I lost something irreplaceable. This means something about my life. The second one is where identity forms and suffering compounds. The first one is just biology moving. A subtle but crucial point. This is not about suppressing thought or staying calm. It is about seeing the body is always innocent. The mind is always constructing meaning, and the two get mistaken as one single reality. You are not trapped by life. You are trapped by what your mind keeps repeating and what your body keeps believing. You take repetition as truth. You take intensity as reality. You take familiarity as identity. And silence? Silence is not doing anything. It is what remains when the sensation is not turned into a story. The story is not turned into identity, and the identity is not defended. The mind's core error. Repetition becomes truth. The mind does not verify reality. It votes by repetition. If a thought appears once, it is nothing. If it appears 100th time, it begins to feel like this must be true. Not because it is true, but because the nervous system has learned familiar is safe, familiar is real. So what you call my belief is often just a loop that survived long enough to feel authoritative. Intensity is mistaken for reality. When something is emotionally charged, heartbreak, anxiety, desire, regret, the body reacts strongly. And then a very subtle error happens. Because I feel it strongly, it must be important and true. But intensity is not truth. Intensity is simply nervous system activation plus attention amplification. A false idea repeated with enough emotional charge can feel more real than a quiet fact. This is how people become prisoners of memories that are no longer happening, fears that have no present substance, identity built from past emotional spikes. Familiarity becomes identity. This is where bondage deepens. The mind prefers a known suffering over an unknown silence. Why? Because suffering is predictable. Suffering has a narrative. Suffering gives you you. So the mind says, this is my sadness, this is my anxiety, this is my story. And once something becomes mine, it is no longer questioned, it is defended. Even pain becomes a possession. The three-layer construction of psychological bondage. What you wrote can be seen as progression. Layer 1, sensation, a raw occurrence, chest tightness, heat, contraction, agitation, no meaning yet. Layer 2, story. The mind overlays interpretation. I am hurt. I lost something. Something is wrong with me. Now there is direction, time, identity. Layer 3, identity. The story hardens. This is who I am right now. This is my emotional state. This is my life condition. Now it must be maintained. And this is where suffering becomes self sustaining. Why silence feels threatening? Silence is not peaceful in the way people imagine. Initially, silence is the absence of narrative support. So, what happens? The story loses momentum, identity loses reinforcement, familiar emotional patterns stop being fed, and the nervous system interprets this as something is missing, something is unsafe. So, it rushes back to thought, not because thought is true, but because thought is known. Silence is not an achievement. Silence is not something you reach. It is what is revealed when sensation is not interpreted. Interpretation is not extended. Extension is not turned into identity. So, silence is not an act. It is the absence of unnecessary construction, the deeper inversion. Ordinarily, the sequence is sensation, story, identity, suffering, reinforcement. But what you are pointing to is sensation, pause, no story, no identity, no suffering amplification. And in that gap, something very important becomes visible. The experience is happening, but you are not inside it. Not as philosophy, as direct perception. The real trap. The trap is not emotion. The trap is automatic interpretation plus ownership of interpretation. You do not suffer because life is intense. You suffer because the mind keeps explaining and the body keeps agreeing. That agreement becomes your reality. The final inversion. You are not trapped in life events. You are trapped in repetition that masquerades as truth, intensity that masquerades as importance, familiarity that masquerades as identity, and silence is simply what remains when none of these are being continuously refed. Not because they are destroyed, but because they are no longer being sustained. At the core, nothing is actually being added to your experience except interpretation. A sensation arises. The mind immediately tries to stabilize it by naming it, explaining it, and placing it inside a story. That story then gets repeated enough times that it starts to feel like a fact. And once it feels like a fact, it becomes identity. So, what began as simple bodily energy becomes meaning, then memory, then self definition. And from there, life feels heavy. Not because the raw experience is heavy, but because it has been continuously interpreted and owned. Silence is simply what is left when this chain is not extended. Not something mystical, not something achieved, just the absence of unnecessary continuation. In that absence, experience is still happening, but without the added layer of this is me, this is my story, this means something about my life. And that is where the weight drops, not because life changes, but because interpretation stops compounding on itself.